Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. Welcome to the Inventus panel on Will AI Eat the World of Venture Capital? My name is Amit Pandey. I am the CMO and head of strategy at an AI startup called Aviso. I've been doing AI startups for the last 7 years. I am based here in the San Francisco Bay Area, been focused on thinking about how AI can solve some of the hardest problems in the world of sales and revenue and go-to-market. I'm on my third startup. I've also done startups in the past in human capital. Let me just do some quick introductions. I'm delighted to have with me on this panel Manu Rekhi. Manu is the managing director of Inventus Capital Partners. Manu has had a ringside view to startup action in the Bay Area, in India, and in many other cross-border contexts. Manu has also been a product leader in the past and has worked at Google and other organizations. So Manu, welcome to the panel. Next, I will quickly introduce Lalitesh. Lalitesh is an LP in Inventus. Lalitesh is also the founder of Indiehood, which does some amazing work with bringing technology and community together. Lalitesh also has the claim to fame of having built a product that's used by billions of people around the world, anywhere in the world that you live, which is Google Maps. Lalitesh's focus on scale goes in the billions with whatever he does. So welcome, Lalitesh, to this panel. Delighted to have you here.
Thank you. Privilege.
Last but not the least, joining us from Brazil is Ricardo. Ricardo is a data scientist, very closely involved with Inventus, and Ricardo is also a serial entrepreneur. Gentlemen, I'm excited to have all of you talk about this interesting gap and specifically talk about how some of the things that we take for granted in Fortune 500 companies and in the world of startups, as we think about the top and middle and bottom of the funnel for any organization and how it applies AI, how that translates to the world of VCs. It seems to me that when we look around the world with everything that's happening around us, we're not talking enough about how AI can transform how the industry of venture capital works and also how VC firms work. So to get us started, Manu and Lalitesh, I'd like to start off with you. From your perspective, how big is this elephant in the room?
Being in the VC world, it has resisted the use of technology. We actually invest in companies that transform the world, but we're really, really hesitant to actually use technology ourselves to actually change the way our day-to-day operations and how we make decisions actually work, right? I had the opportunity to sort of work with Ricardo and Lalit for a long time. And Ricardo, especially us, actually did some very seminal work to actually use data from our startups, being able to analyze using our pattern recognition to be able to help our founders make better decisions. We had a fantastic result with this with Poshmark, where we were able to put 30 times more capital to work, given some of the data science work that Ricardo had actually helped us figure out, right? And so I think, and this obviously helped the founder take that company public eventually as well, and it came at a very pivotal time. So we saw the value of how analyzing information and using our pattern recognition can be really helpful. So this thing had a 10-year leg to be able to get to this point. And now with generative AI, this actually can work at scale. Things that I've been brewing in my head along with these gentlemen, is able to come to fruition because of what generative AI is able to do. So I'm really excited to sort of dive deeper in what our team has been able to build so far. Part of the problem is how our organizations are run. You raise a fund, it's a 10-year fund, and by the time you're third or fourth year, you're raising a second fund. So you don't have results from the first one, you've already raised your second one and the third one. And so by the time the investors realize that you really are not very good at investing, you've already had 15, 17 years in it, right? So it's a lot harder to kill the VC firm than is to a startup, right? And I think this is the reason when you're fat, dumb, and happy, things, you don't have to put the effort in to make changes, right? So if you think of why large organizations are slow to move, I think this is why a lot of VCs don't see the problem as imminent because they're happy doing what has worked. If software was to eat the world, and I think it has not touched us as hard, why not us, right? And so I've always been itching to sort of say, hey, how can we leverage the qualitative part of our mind with more quantitative stuff, right? And so can I make decisions faster, better, cheaper? over the last 10, 15 years, the number of startups have blossomed, right? It's 5 to 10x more than it used to be. The deal flow has been going up. But your capacity to make those decisions and helping your founders and doing all the stuff can't just go up just, because you're limited by hours in a day. So I think it's imminent to be able to use technology now. Larger venture funds or late stage, especially venture funds or private equity funds, they use these technologies more because there's a lot more data available, right? The noise to signal ratio in the early stages is a much harder problem to deal with. And I think this is why I've been excited to actually solve this problem. So it's not going to replace at this moment. It's more of a co-pilot that, if I'm 65% correct, can I leverage these things to be 73% correct, right? Or my batting ratio goes up higher. And that can make a massive difference, especially because, these are non-linear results that come through.
Lalitesh, from your perspective, both as an investor now behind the fund and also as a technology executive and entrepreneur yourself, you didn't start out as an investor. You expanded your portfolio of work on the investment side. What are some of the things that have surprised or intrigued you the most about this world, coming in from the scale of Google that you came from?
Yeah, I don't think I consider myself an expert in investing, which is one reason I invested in Inventus. And Inventus, looks at the world, the investment world, the traditional way, which is paradoxical. I think is the right way, which is you look at basics like product and people product fit, and you look at what is the unit economics and revenue and so on. Seems like very old-fashioned terms, but I think those are the terms that will matter far more in the AI age. I think to answer your question, as a investor in an individual startup, I'm investing because of my knowledge of the technology or product. But if I'm investing as a LP, I'm investing like you invest in a startup, you invest in the people. In this case, Kanwal and Manu and the stalwarts in the field. The interesting thing about the AI age, I call it the infinity era, is it's going to upend everything. Like you said, it's not just touching one thing, it's going to touch every aspect of how business is run and every aspect of how life happens. And not just touch, it'll upend all of that and rewrite it probably a few times before it settles down. I have a very simple notion about this journey that Manu and team are embarking on to adopt AI into their VC firm, which is that if you're not a deep user of AI, I don't think you'll be able to make sense of the companies that come your way. So I'm very happy that Inventus is taking on becoming an AI shop, trying to turn the whole VC game into a product, because at a minimum, and I think knowing Ricardo and Manu, they will succeed. But at a minimum, they'll be rich users of this technology. And if you are not, I don't think you're in the game.
I love this opening framing you've both done. There is an inevitability and there is an exponential rate of change that is going to happen to the world of VC with AI. Those firms that are taking a ground-up approach, the way Inventus has been over the last many, many years, are going to be much better positioned, for success, regardless of what you actually invest in. So if I, shift gears from here into the second part of our discussion, which is the role of data and AI in the solution. We've spoken a bit about the problem. Now let's switch gears to talk a bit about the direction of the solution. What I'd like to ask you, Ricardo, as a data scientist, when you look at an organization's work, let's say you take Domino's Pizza or a large healthcare company or a large company in some other field, we are already seeing startups bring data and AI into some very specific things. Data is being collected and enriched in a better way. Workflows are being optimized and automated. Specifically, even communication and collaboration between teams is starting to see more data and AI. The world of VCs doesn't talk about these things, in the same way. So maybe just to kind of frame us, what are some of the ways in which data and AI first should even be thought about in the life cycle and the journey that a VC and its ecosystem embarks on? Could you share some of your thoughts on this?
Yes, of course. I think there are many ways to look into the problem. One way that we're approaching this is trying to figure out the whole pipeline that consists of a VC firm and find opportunities that we can use to automate using these new technologies that are available now. That was not possible before. There's a lot of automation that already goes in, but this new generation of AI with LLMs really allows a new level of automation. The top of the funnel, where we can do deal sourcing and tracking, we can try to identify new potential investment opportunities and then track them over time. If they are too early for us, then we can track them over time to see when they are the right time for us. And then if we go deeper into the funnel, we go to diligence, right? And then we can streamline data collection, background checks, market research, financial analysis. All of that is something are things that are done today by an analyst, but can be profoundly automated to help them focus on their core value, so they won't be wasting time collecting data and transforming that data and put into Excel sheets and then thinking about it. We really want for an analyst to do the thinking part and let the AI gives everything already more or less chewed up and ready to go. But also portfolio, once the startup goes into the VC firm, we can do portfolio management as well, right? So we can track performance, we can track KPIs for those portfolio companies automatically, and tag things that should be highlighted for a board meeting. We think a lot about how we can help an analyst do its job on analyzing a company and deciding whether or not it's a good fit for the fund. A lot of that goes into data enrichment, for example. So we really want to be able to collect data and integrate that data into a coherent story. And so it's not just a lot of data into some sheets or a folder. It's all connected. It creates a story that can be told and makes sense to whoever is making the decision. And we can also think about ways to use AI to do communication and collaboration, for example, relationship mapping. So how do we build a network of people around the startup so that we can help the startups? How do we connect the right people? How do we know who are the right people? What kind of knowledge they have? How can they help with the startup itself? So this network building around the VC firm and around the AI, around the startups is really something that will play a huge role in applying AI technologies for VC.
The avatar, I think we have to wear is that of a disruptor. These fields, right, which are getting disrupted, they require a very different kind of a VC. Right? The same way as the technology world required a very different kind of investor, very different than the traditional investors, right, of the 1920s and 30s and 40s. We are going to need a very different kind of an investor. At a minimum, they need to understand what this animal is that we are talking about.
This is fascinating, and it takes me to something that, Manu, I've observed in the last decade, knowing you, the panel here. This has struck me about Inventus and your approach, right, which is, the old Alan Kay line that the best way to predict the future is to invent it. Is to actually build it, right? Let's talk about it. And so we get to the home stretch in this panel. Let's switch gears to talking about what's actually happening now, right? One of the things that I'd love to hear from your perspective, Manu, to kick us off is that, Inventus has always taken a philosophical and a portfolio approach to the ecosystem also, not just to your startup. You're doing the same thing with the application of AI to the world of VC. So at a big picture level, first of all, what are all the different things that you're doing that have already been in the works for the last several years, that, in a sense, you're now starting to take into the mainstream? Could you, anchor some of what we're seeing on the slide around the different ways the funnel is starting to see AI in the work that you and Ricardo and team are already doing?
We look at our funnel in three different distinct areas, right? So there's the sourcing, like meeting founders and sort of making decisions to actually invest in them. Once they're a portfolio company, how do you help them scale, right? So that, and then the last piece is the exit, whether it's an IPO or M&A or a shutdown. And Kanwal actually puts it very beautifully. It's like you find them, you grind them, and then you mine them, right? And so there's three different sort of distinct areas, right? And each of those areas have a very different way to actually apply technology and AI and data science, right? So we started out, focused in the last 10 years on the middle section, right? Okay, how do I apply the knowledge and the AI data science to be able to help our portfolio companies scale faster and better and find those pieces? And so So we had some pretty good successes there, and those learnings with Ricardo and team actually helped us, sort of go to the next piece, which is actually getting the accessing more capital for our firms, right? Because once with our money is in, we need the next set of VCs to come in the Series A, B, C, and beyond to be able to continue building the company forward, right? So we focus on the second part of the last part of the funnel. These are easier problems to do than the top of the funnel because the noise to ratio, signal ratio is very low at the top of the funnel. So we attack the problem just like any entrepreneur would. Find the lowest common piece that has the highest bang for the buck. Focus there first, learn, improve, and then you start chewing bigger problems over time, right? So if you look at how this slide is laid out, we didn't want to focus on the sourcing and screening because that's where a lot of the qualitative aspect of our partners come in, right? And that's very hard to sort of solve with data science. And so we focused on the other ones the last 10 years or so. And then, just as an example, one of the companies I presented earlier today, Arna Networks, we actually had matched them, trying to figure out which VCs around the thousands of VCs around, that would be the right matches for them for a Series A investment. The second part is the same analogy I used with VC is also being used to introduce them to customers, right? We have large networks of people we've collected over decades of being in the industry. But, and then people move around. So how do you find, okay, well, this startup has this problem, this somebody else I know, or my network, or my LPs, or, Lalit may know, or you may know. How do I find the right matchmaking for those people so that I can introduce them at the right time as well, right? And so this was very hand-to-hand combat, very hard to do before, spreadsheets, and it was always very inefficient. So we're applying, and Ricardo and team are applying generative AI and these pieces to be able to reach to them very succinctly as well. So that's where it's sort of like a co-pilot helping us do more. And so we can focus more of our time on the qualitative aspect, mentoring the founders, helping them scale, becoming better CEOs, right? Our job is to take good technical founders, and then by the time we're done, is to make them really good CEOs, right? And so that's qualitative part, that coaching, which we enjoy doing, but and I want to do more of this, and my team wants to do more of this, and so that's where we want to focus more for time. And the third aspect is which is what we're starting to attack soon, is the sourcing and the top of the funnel, right? Generative AI, the changes in the last year or so have dramatically improved technology that we can finally do what we've been thinking about doing in that funnel. When I see a new deck coming in from a founder, you have 40, maybe 60% of information that you need to be able to sort of say, hey, whether I take the next meeting or not, right? Should I take a physical meeting? Because I get 3,000 inbounds coming in. We only invest in 8 to 10 companies. Well, we have to be very selective who I spend time with as well, right? I mean, because that's the limited aspect. So in this case, the AI could actually analyze the information, come out, well, you have these pieces that are missing. Can I find this information on the open web, right? Like founder traits are very important to us, but typical deck will have one page that tells you I went to Stanford, or I went to IIT, or I went somewhere else, but it really doesn't tell you how do the founders know each other, what have they worked together, have they been in trenches, all the aspects. So, but people leave all these trails behind on social media and on web and everywhere else. And can we collect that information and give me a 360 feedback on the founder? The financials can be looked through, figuring out whether the financials and the strategy on the deck actually match together, right? So all this information can be put together so that I'm spending less time data gathering on the meeting and spending more time actually asking the qualitative stuff that, which makes the difference between our, pattern recognition, right? So that's how we've been tackling it. And it's finally, the technology has finally come to the place where it can actually match the dreams that we have within Inventus.
This is an alpha version of the AI copilot that we're building in-house. And this is basically a mix of many technologies. At the core of it, we have large language model agents that are collecting and aggregating and summarizing data on someone. So in the previous screen, you could see that we had a form where all that we have to give is a company name, a description, maybe a pitch deck if it's available, and then links to the founders' LinkedIn's or websites. And then the agent goes on to collect all the data that it can on the startup and on the founders, and it creates a comprehensive report on many elements of what it can find, right? So it will go on to find like where the education, where the founders worked, if they worked together or not before, what kind of startups they had before or not. We also collect on recent events for the company, for the startups, any news and investments, previous investments, any hidden information that it might not be in the pitch deck. So we really are enriching the pitch deck with all this kind of ecosystem of information around the founders and the company so that we can give a report. And we actually have run this to create a very short report on each of portfolio companies that are presenting on demo day.
Manu, is there anything you'd like to mention about the product we're seeing and some of this direction before we bring it back to one final question I want to ask all of you before we close?
No, I mean, so even though this idea for the Copilot was focused on the top of the funnel to sort of help us with thousands of deals coming in and how do we sort of filter this down, but the way Ricardo imagined this for the first phase was like actually helping our portfolio companies as they go raise new rounds of capital, right? Their Series A and B. This is almost like creating a diligence room, a data room on the fly for our founders so that they can actually help get their fundraising done faster. So one of the goals that we have internally is like, well, can we start from the day of fundraising to getting a term sheet or two within 6 weeks, right? So can I productize fundraising so that you're spending less time fundraising and more time actually building products and sales, because that's where the value is, rather than actually spending time raising money from people like me, right? So we want to reduce this down. This demo day is also sort of the similar part where you're getting exposures to hundreds of VCs in one shot. And by bringing this all together, you actually add value to our founders, but reducing the time that is not necessary building great products, right?
This is exciting. I mean, just looking at this product, I feel like using it in its early stage.
And I like LPs like Lalit, who are practitioners, are actually in the fray. Right. They're not 70 years old, 60 years old, that have made money or have family wealth, or institutions, because I think they're too far removed, right? I'd rather have 400 LPs like Lalit, and that actually helps my founders as well. So recently we did an AI audit of all our startups, and it was all led by our LPs.
So it's been an absolute pleasure having you all on this panel. I encourage everyone that's listening to this panel, whether you're an early stage startup or you're a friend of the fund or you're someone in the ecosystem, to share your thoughts back with Manu and the team. So thank you so much for all your time on the panel today, and good luck to all the startups that are presenting as part of this program.